Order for a public hearing.
Thank you. Rules of order for public hearing, zoning matters, City Code, Section 280-2. The hearing shall be presided over by the mayor. After calling the hearing to order, the mayor shall request that the parcels of property which are the subject of the zoning proposal be identified and read. Following such identification and reading, the development director's recommendation shall be presented. The mayor and the city council shall cause the director's written recommendation to be made part of the record. Proponents of each proposed zoning decision shall then be allowed a total of 10 minutes for presentation of data, evidence, and opinion concerning the zoning decision. If all 10 minutes are not used, the proponent's remaining time may be reserved for rebuttal. Opponents of each proposed zoning decision shall then be allowed a total of 10 minutes for presentation of data, evidence, and opinion concerning each zoning decision. The presentation times may not be reduced, but may be extended by majority vote, provided they are expanded equally for proponents and opponents. Anyone wishing to speak must come to the microphone and give their name and address to the city clerk. Do not speak unless you have the microphone and have been recognized.
Thank you, Karen. First item, 3237 PZ 2021 913 1957 Commodore Drive, Streetscape.
Thank you and good evening. The subject parcel is 1957 Commodore Lane. The request is for a variance to not install the streetscape. The zoning is an NR1 zoning district. The parcel is 0.2 acres. The project is to complete a single-family detached residential home. The property is located at the end of Commodore Lane. It dead ends into the Chamblee United Methodist Church. I say dead ends, but as you may know, actually they allow traffic to go through that through their facility. It's on the corner there. It is a wooded lot at the end of Commodore Lane. This is the proposed site plan, and it shows in red the boundary of the property and the home. Would note that the length, the dimensions of the existing right-of-way of the existing street would already accommodate any sidewalk if it were added. That is to say, the applicant would not need to dedicate any property to have a sidewalk added. It would be within the existing right-of-way. These are the elevations. Another set from another view. This is from the rear. Here are some photos from the front and along the street. The right photo, the subject property is on the right around the curve. Additional photos for context of the existing street, which does not have an existing sidewalk on it. What happened to my recommendations? So the recommendations from staff is that staff had recommended approval with a condition to pay a fee in lieu of for the sidewalk. Apologize for that, excuse me.
Anything else?
No, that concludes the staff report.
Anything from Mr. Walker? All right, we will have proponents for this project step up to the microphone, give your name, address, and your relationship to the project to the city clerk.
I can speak loudly. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Darren Cussman, Roma Fine Homes. I'm the builder and developer on the project. Appreciate you taking the time to let me speak here tonight. I'll try to be brief. I know you've got a full agenda. I did pass around just some brief information earlier. I've got copies over here if anyone would like. Don't want to leave anyone out. This is a single-family detached home in the Huntley Hills neighborhood. The entire Huntley Hills neighborhood is exempt from the streetscape requirements except for this lot. There is one new subdivision around the corner where there are 5 or 6 homes that all have the streetscape installed. They're contiguous at the end of a cul-de-sac. But really what we're asking for is the same treatment as every other home within the Huntley Hills neighborhood. There's a new construction home across the street, no sidewalk, no streetscape. There's one that just completed on Ensign Drive, no sidewalk, no streetscape. There are some hardships we're trying to address: missing middle housing. so this is a smaller home than what you're typically seeing in the neighborhood. And just the cost of bringing utilities to the site alone was $20,000. That's because there is no sewer in Commodore Lane there. So I'm going to flip over to the next page just to kind of highlight some of the things that we've done for the community in this process that I think show and meet the intent of the public good. First and foremost, I just talked about that sewer line. That runs through the adjacent property, so if you look at the bottom right of that site plan, you can see a sewer easement there. Within that sewer easement, there are 145 caliper inches of mature trees. So instead of open trenching that, which would require removal of all of those trees, we actually bored under those trees to preserve them at a cost to us of $5,000. The value of those trees saved, based on the city's recompense, is over $18,000. We removed a tree that had fallen on the church property. We cleaned debris from the church property. We delivered and spread mulch on the church property. We removed a hazardous and dead tree on the adjacent rental property for the neighbors at their request. So you take kind of all of those together at cost, wrap them up, add in the value of that tree, of those trees we saved, you're at a community benefit of almost $26,000. Moving on to the next page, you look at the streetscape cost. That comes to about $3,300. The biggest issue we've run into is the street light from Georgia Power. We have not been able to get a response from Georgia Power to mobilize to install that street light. So we can't put it in, we can't finish the project. Personally, I don't think the sidewalk really makes sense there. It's not going to be continued because the rest of the neighborhood is exempt. And looking at the cost of compliance with the recommended conditions, that actually exceeds the cost of installing the streetscape by about $1,500, which is the final page. So we are effectively asking that council consider waiving this requirement, given what we've done for the community, the $8,000 we've spent for community benefit off-site, and the $18,000 worth of trees we have saved. Just in closing, this home is sold. It's a wonderful family coming from Gramercy. They sent me a note tonight. Hi, Darren. I'm so sorry we're not going to be able to make it tonight. I now have to head to Roswell unexpectedly, and Candace is home with the girls. I really wanted to say a few words in support of not adding a sidewalk in the front of our home. As we know, the sidewalk will look out of place, and it's really useless in that area. Again, so sorry we couldn't make it. So thank you so much. Any questions, happy to answer, but I'll let you get on.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this project? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this project, please come up to the microphone, state your name, your address, give it to the city clerk. No one? So we'll move on to the next item. That's item number 2 on the agenda is 3238 PZ 2021-914-3127 and 3137 Chamblee Dunwoody Road variance and waivers.
Thank you. Subject property 3127 and 3137 Chamblee Dunwoody is requesting variance and waivers. This is about 1.5 acres of 2 properties. One of the properties you may have known of, the Clear Solutions, which had burned down. That is one of the sites. It's near the intersection with Buford Highway. The request is to reduce the zoning buffer, which is 30 feet to 20 feet, and a request of relief from requiring interparcel connections to the commercial lots to the east and west. The applicant is providing interparcel connectivity to the north. So the request is just for these other 2 interparcel connections. The proposed development is around 18,100 square feet of a commercial center. It's comprised of 2 buildings. This also of note is that this project does trigger the 70% redevelopment threshold, so they will have to bring everything up to code. The owner will, and to that, the owner will be installing the complete streetscape, complying with the parking spaces, providing just under 80% impervious area, providing 13,000 square feet of open space and 7,000 square feet of open space that's going to specifically include public access And some of that you can see provided along the street frontage where there's a supplemental area and outdoor dining space, and then also outdoor dining to the rear of what's proposed as Building 2. The conditions that we recommend later on address the question of having the parking that is located along the front. While technically potentially meeting the code requirement, it's not meeting the intent of what we want to see of having buildings line the front street and not having parking. So the condition we're recommending, when we get to that point, I wanted you to see it as it relates to this, is a reconfiguration of the buildings so that they more meet the intent of interfacing with the street and lining the street. So you'll see that in a moment. But the specific request concerns the interparcel connectivity and the zoning buffer. To the rear, you do see that the shape of the property is an irregular shape, and there are some topo constraints on one side that do make the interparcel difficult on one side. Here are some of the photographs of the existing site. Excuse me. The staff recommends approval from the variance to reduce from 30 feet of the zoning buffer to 20 feet. Part of the rationale concerns the distance from the buildings that are on the property behind that has multifamily and duplexes behind there. The closest would be like 110 feet. And the other request about the interparcel connectivity, staff recommended approval to not provide it on the lot to the west, and that is due to topographical constraints. But staff recommends denial of the waiver regarding interparcel access to the east. And we tied those with conditions that if you do see reasons for approval of this, to condition it that the applicant remove those 5 parking spaces from the front and work with us to reconfigure the building so it meets more the intent of the code along the street frontage. And that's our report.
Thank you, Michelle. Anything else, Mr. Walker? Those wishing to speak in favor of this project, please come to the microphone, give your name and relationship to the project addressed to the city clerk. Looks like it's you, huh?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councils. The architect may be late for the meeting. So I have trouble with the terms, but I think we are trying to comply with all the regulations, the city, all the councils, all the staff members in the development to give us. We think this project will bring lots of good things for the communities. Yes, basically right now it looks very bad. There are lots of weeds, lots of leaves, and also we're still trying to rent the fence to guard the location because we don't want some people get in trouble inside. The people there, I saw one day driving back past there, and there's some people actually try to pee there, so it's very bad. That's it. I hope you can approve. Like the lady just mentioned, all the front parking, we can just do whatever is necessary to avoid that. And I don't understand what's that interparcel from the connected to the east property. What's that mean?
This portion of the meeting is just for you to give your thoughts on it, but this will come up later in the meeting. Council will be able to ask you questions, and maybe your architect will be here, and we can cover that time. Does that sound good?
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this project? Don't see anybody coming. I hear something, but I don't see anything. All right, so we'll go on to the next item. That is 3240 PZ-2021-914- I'm reading the wrong one. Sorry.
What happened?
Can start over. I'm reading the second one again. Oh, I'm good. I didn't bring my glasses, but this is fine. Third item on the agenda is PZ-240, PZ-2021-915-4011 and 4079 Chamblee Dunwoody Road, rezoning DCI and variance to repurpose for Repose Chamblee. I guess that's the name of the project, Repose. Michelle, thank you.
Correct, yes. So the subject property is 4011 and 4079 Chamblee Dunwoody Road. This is a little over 11 acres of combined properties. They currently are zoned NR1 and NR2, and the request is to rezone from NR1 and NR2 to NR3. It is also a development of community impact. It's a DCI, and the applicant is also requesting 4 concurrent variances. The project is a 57-lot subdivision with detached single-family cottage-style homes. They're on smaller lots, but with intentional community space. The project includes having both front-loaded and rear-loaded units. That is, the access to the garage would be from an alleyway and not from the front of the street, so that the several sets of the units can face a common green space area. They are going to be including the installation of a 12-foot tiered system retaining wall, so that was attentive to having the tiered system that we prefer for anything that's larger. They are also going to be having a screening buffer, and they are proposing to include a 12-foot wide trail along Chamblee Dunwoody, and including a running trail in Nancy Creek along buffer, but this would have to be of unpaved material. So when it says crusher, that would require working with the city engineer so that it's unpaved and material that is appropriate for the buffer and any mitigation. Just to clarify, the material would need to still be defined with the city engineer. In addition, the applicant is asking for relief from the setbacks, front, side, and rear setbacks. They're asking to not install the 5-foot landscape zone along the internal streets. So that's due to having those shorter drives. Then you just have sort of like little mustaches of landscape strip if they are required to have them in there, given the tight configuration of the design. They're requesting to allow to relocate how the street trees and pedestrian lighting, the location, instead of having it between the back of the sidewalk and building face. And then they are also asking to increase the maximum height of the retaining wall, and that's why I mentioned it in the first opening about the tiered system, that they're proposing to mitigate the impacts of having one that is higher than the rules allow. This is the survey with the topography indicated. This is the layout of all of the parcels, and you see the stream that surrounds it in the rear and the buffer of that. On this slide, you'll be able to see where the green space in the orange center there, you can see where that'll be the green space that's proposed to front then the interior lots, and as well as the location of the trail along the stream buffer. These are some of the elevations of the interior lots, the smaller, tighter lots and smaller footprint. And then on the exterior, there's larger homes, a larger footprint, and then against the rear, at the rear of the site, also larger lots and larger size envelopes. It's an existing wooded area. The picture to the right is an example of a similar project they have in the city of Brookhaven, so you can see how the interior green space that faces the interior lots you get a sense of the look and feel for it. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning and recommends approval of the variances. DRB also recommended approval. We include a set of conditions that includes addressing the retaining wall. We have a recommendation, a recommended condition to see the operations off of Chamblee Dunwoody. This would, any left turn coming into there, we want to assess if a left turn lane would be warranted. It may not, given the number, but we just don't have that answer, so we're asking to condition that we examine it and be prepared for the results of that examination from the city engineer. And then additional from the DRB was a condition to provide pedestrian connectivity on the southernmost stub to access the proposed Nancy Creek Trail segment that the applicant is proposing to install. So with that, that is our report.
Thank you, Michelle. Anything from you, Mr. Walker? Those wishing to speak in favor of this project, please come step up to the microphone, give us your name, address, and relationship to the project.
Kenneth Wood, 350 Research Court, Peachtree Corners, Georgia. I'm the applicant representing Empire Communities for Repose, and we've got some handouts. I know sometimes it's hard to look up at the different monitor for some different things, looking at it. And so this project has been looked at, quite a while. We started looking at it and trying to figure out what the best way to orient. And we really took what we heard in the past and tried to correct everything we heard that were issues and bring forward a really great plan with everything being single-family detached. That was something we really heard. And so staff did a great job, so I want to make sure to hit on the highlights with the time that we have. And so I'll start off by the trail. There's a couple of different things. There's a 12-foot trail that runs across the entire frontage of the development. And we've got access as you get a little bit further north to get down to the proposed trail that would be that Nancy Creek Trail. And so what we did is we demarcate what would essentially be the trail and then also the easement area. And so what we were proposing is to do a crusher run material. It's what the state parks use. If you go running down at Soap Creek or some of those areas, that's what they use, and it tamps down really well. And so we would be definitely working with your city engineer to figure out that's the best material and what would be good there. But essentially we're following that sanitary line after we walked it again to make sure it was still clear. Nothing has grown up in that area, and so that seems to be the best way. As you enter into, and Andrew, if you could go over to either 8 or 10 on the slide, page 8 or 10 for the site plan. If you're looking at the site plan, we have the 2 access points. Now the second access point, that is a limited access, so that would be right in, right out in terms of it's not full access. There's some sight distance looking back up toward the red light, and so that is just right in, right out. The other one lines up with Winchester Drive just across from this. And then what we did, there's a project that we designed up the street where you essentially have that courtyard that you look through. It's in Brookhaven, but it's just up the road. It's been extremely popular where you have that whole look at the courtyard. And that's the look that we have here, and I've got some pictures to kind of walk you guys through that. And so the other parts of the site plan is we tried to pull it up further up from the buffer so that we have those specimen trees in the back along the buffer, which I can show you, which we're saving in the back there that we have. Now, when we're looking at the center area, that center area is about 80, 90 feet across. There are some grade changes up near the front, and so what we've done is kind of establish a low 3 to 4 foot wall in those tiered areas so that you have that full space, whether you live up on the top or you live up on the bottom. And then we're using essentially basements on the northern area, so everybody has a 2-3, and then in the center area it'd be a 2-3 with everybody facing that park with that 2-story, and kind of walk you guys through that. The retaining wall was something else I wanted to walk through. So we took a picture and worked with Andrew and talked with him as well about this wall. Over at Keswick is a good example. So we're talking about doing a vegetative wall, and we're able to tier it as we show on the grading plan, and we're really able to tier it in a couple of different places and keep that height much lower. Previously, in previous plans, it was a lot higher. The trail connections were really important, and I wanted to explain those. So on the northern side, there would be a connection we show on the site plan. In the center from the stub road, we showed another connection. We didn't show it on the south side, but when we were talking to DRB, what we talked about was that it was important to have that another connection. And so the discussion that revolved around that night was we will do everything kind of to bring a trail down toward the easement and then down, because if we just try to go straight down, it's like we fall down, because if you go too far over, we left that whole slope alone for the reason it's steep. And so we wanted to talk about basically coming down toward the sewer easement and then going down to access that. And so we just talked about that would be worked out with the city engineer, with the DRB going through there. On the variances, most of the variance that we asked for with the sidewalk, the landscape strip, is something that we've done on every project that we've done in Chamblee, because when you're doing kind of the more urban feel, whether it's detached or attached communities, having that additional 5 feet with the driveways feels like it's cluttered. And what we're noticing on our projects is that we're noticing that the third part, whether it's Power, Xfinity, AT&T, somewhere in the near future, they can come through and kind of take out those trees within that strip near the road. And so we're proposing having more room, landscaping against the house, and just essentially just swapping the landscape zone back behind there. So you're putting your lighting and your landscaping behind it. That way the utilities can go under the sidewalk for there, if you're looking at that. This is the signage for the project. We looked at all kind of different themes and feels for you have it, and we tried to show exactly how that multi-use trail would be, where the stormwater would go. That stormwater is going to be underground, so it would not be visible from the community. We wanted to make sure between the wall and the stormwater pond that was not visible from the community. If you can turn over to like number 20, 21 in there, kind of show you guys some visuals. So this is that courtyard in the bottom left, and we have a larger picture. That gives you a feel for how that will open up, how that will be landscaped. It will be a very active zone. It's designed so that when people come home, they can basically go out their front door and kind of have that community within that zone. And we ran that the entire length down all the way to where it opens up in the little bit larger plaza area, and really create kind of that nice area here for all the residents. And then on the outside of it, everybody has that split that splits to the landscaped area or to the forested area. Now on the south side, another really important item is we have a landscape plan that is part of the presentation, and that has been talked about with the neighbor on the south, and making sure that gets implemented along with the fencing that we have proposed. And that is this landscaping, so you can see the evergreens and also the other trees that we planted along that zone. And then the last couple of slides we have in terms of the product type, really high-end product type that Empire builds. They've built all over Atlanta, up in Alpharetta, Brookhaven, everywhere. And so really trying to bring a really nice product. And we've got some kind of an overall bird's eye view on page 26 and 27, so you guys can get a feel for how that looks. And on that slide, what you're showing is we have the 4 units that are turned side to the road, to Chamblee Dunwoody, but they're not actually turned. They are basically addressed to the road. So we either turn the porches, turn the doors, and basically have it so they're addressing the side of that road on those elevations. And we can talk through more of that. We have the architect here as well with us. And then on the last slide, you can kind of see the overall bird's eye view. And then the last thing I'll say in terms of, there was some discussion about the left turn lane and traffic, and what we've basically said and committed to is that we'll follow, any GDOT standards for the roadway and work with the city engineer on what he wants to see there, perform the traffic study, which we have a memo today that we can go over. And with that, I can either take any questions or let me know if you have any.
No, that's it. Questions will come up later in the meeting. Appreciate it. Got about 4 minutes left. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this project? Anyone wishing to speak? There he is.
Matt Oliaro. I live at 1883 Wendell Court. Excuse me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I live about a quarter mile from this development. I was also involved in the reference development on the Brookhaven side of the street. Very similar in design, very similar in density. We built 26 units over there. Of those, I believe 22 are currently sold. 5 are still under construction. It's been very well received by the surrounding neighborhoods. It's obviously a very well received product in the market. And with that, I just wanted to give my support for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this project? Okay, you got about 2.5 minutes left. We'll save that for rebuttal if necessary. Those wishing to speak in opposition of this project, step up to the microphone, give your name, city clerk.
Hi there. So, I ended up a little late today.
It's okay.
My name is Jonathan Blaze, and I live in the Gainsborough neighborhood. I'm not necessarily in opposition to this. I just was concerned in terms of the mature trees that are going to be cut down. I just didn't want to see the site clear cut. Purely aesthetic, environmental. I know there's considerations with Nancy Creek and runoff, but I just wanted that to be taken into consideration because my understanding is the original zoning had something like 27 homes that it was zoned for, and now it's going to be zoned for 57. So, it seems like there's quite a bit of a difference. I was trying to look through all the notes today, but I could be wrong on the original zoning, but just wanted to express my concern about the mature tree growth and just note that.
Thank you very much.
Hi there, Stephen Lathrop, 1730 Remington Road. I live in the neighborhood directly across the street. I think it actually is a great plan. I love it, just not for this site. So I've got four main points I want to bring up. Number one is the zoning N3 is incredibly tight. The actual width of the lots is about 35 feet. The neighborhood I live in, which is directly across the street, that's been there since 1958, is zoned R100. So you have 100-foot wide frontages, and it's a marked difference to be directly across the street. It's very juxtaposed. I'm very concerned about the traffic. I see it as a safety issue. That lot is on a hill and a curve. If you've ever driven Chamblee Dunwoody Road, nobody goes 35. People are going 55 miles an hour, and I can tell you, I take a left out of Winchester Trail, which is directly across the street from where these residents would be needing to take a left. It is highly dangerous, very dangerous. And I've almost been hit several times trying to turn there. So I try to use the traffic light at Remington when I can. I don't know how you would mitigate that per se, other than I think you would need not only a turn lane, you would need a decel lane to turn right as well, because people are coming around that hill and corner, and they're just not going to know that people are taking a right. It's very dangerous. In addition, there's no parking in this plan. So if you'll note, there are absolutely zero visitor parking spaces. You have very short driveways, 57 houses, 2 cars per house. It's 114 cars. If you invite friends over, they're going to need to park somewhere. Where are they going to park? In my neighborhood. There's no pedestrian walkway directly across. Again, you're on a hill and a curve. You're going to have people darting across that street because they can't park in that neighborhood. That is an additional safety issue. The precedent clearly has already been set with Gramercy being N2 zoned. I would not be in opposition for N2 zoning with some additional parking to reduce some of the density, to reduce the number of cars needing to turn left. I think that generally makes sense. I'm in agreement with the gentleman that just spoke as well regarding sustainability and trees. There's going to be a lot of damage to the riparian zone, a lot of trees taken down. Brookhaven has worked very hard, and in my neighborhood, they just established this past year a new green space park to preserve that green belt that follows Nancy Creek. This is undoing a good portion of that work that's been done. In terms of the variances, from my notes and researching the product, I appreciate the tiered system. I understand there were actually 2 retaining walls, and at one point they're talking 14 feet high. That may have been changed since the information I got, but that is crazy, and to me it speaks to a lot, again, that's not well suited for this plan. I like the plan. The topography of this parcel doesn't fit the plan. I understand wanting to make a profit. I do understand the more units, the more profit. I get it. But it just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the character. It doesn't fit the safety. It doesn't fit the visibility or the traffic. So with that, I will let anyone else speak that is in opposition. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this project, please come up to the microphone. State your name, give your address. Still got several minutes.
Good evening. My name is Jim Corwell. I live at 2012 Gainsborough Drive, off Chamblee, Dunwoody. I've lived there for 26 years. I inherited the house from my mother. My grandmother lived there 26 years. My grandmother was postmaster of Chamblee from 1933 to 1962. She started out with one employee herself, Lockhart's drugstore, building still there. When she left, she had 88 men. I don't know that that's relevant to this, but I just wanted to say that. The other thing is, today's Marine Corps birthday, November the 10th, 1775. Marine Corps is a year older than the United States of America. In reference to this parcel, I think it's too dense. I personally had a wreck coming around that curve. It's a very dangerous curve. And anybody who says it isn't is not dealing with reality. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, the city of Chamblee picked up a deer out of the road over there. Every day, not every day, I get up very early in the morning. I have 3 or 4 deer grazing in my lot all over Gainsborough. 8 o'clock in the morning, you can drive through Gainsborough and the deer are grazing. I think at this lot, I think these people need to make a profit. I'm in agreement with that. It's too dense. There's too little parking. That man's correct. It was ahead of me. That corner is dangerous. I see no signs of a stoplight there. The two streets that come into I believe the east of that, they have a stoplight right up the hill, and they've put a stoplight so that if you come around the corner you can see. But that curve is dangerous, and that proposal is beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of artwork. I know those architects worked hard on it to give a good job, but it's too dense, and there's no parking, and that corner is not safe. So unless the city of Chamblee or the DeKalb County is going to modify Chamblee-Dunwoody Road significantly, I don't see how you can put over 50 individual residents on that small piece of property, and those people trying to get in and out. And as far as what the man said about no parking, he's absolutely right. I've gone through Winchester and Colt over there. I used to run track at Chamblee. I played football at Chamblee, and I wrestled at Chamblee, and I left Chamblee and went in the Marine Corps. And I'm saying to you, I've run up that hill. I used to call it Heartbreak Hill. It's a tough hill. That one coming up Nancy Creek Heights is another one. Coming up from the lake, that's a tough hill.
We have about 1 minute left on the rebuttal time limit.
I just want to say that it's a beautiful project. It is not well conceived, but the lot that's there, it's not well conceived, but the traffic and the safety, it's not well conceived for the wildlife that exists in the area. And that's what I have to say. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. That concludes the rebuttal portion of the meeting.
I propose that we allow a few more minutes.
Okay. Well, by consensus.
A few more minutes. I believe there's somebody else that wishes to comment.
Sure, no problem. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this against this project? Please step up to the microphone and.
You don't want to? All right.
Hello, I'm Verl Van Hoosen, 2099 Gramercy Circle. I too feel that project is a nice project. However, I really am concerned as far as the traffic and the traffic flow that the 3 gentlemen that had mentioned before. It is a real concern. I live at Gramercy Circle. There's 52 homes there, and we do have that stoplight. But the traffic, even though that stoplight is there, it still causes a tremendous amount of concern. So I just want to make sure that you guys are aware that that needs to be addressed going forward, that the traffic needs to be looked at seriously. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak during this expanded time? All right, that concludes this portion. I believe we had 2.5 minutes left before, and we expanded another one, so the proponents will get another 3 minutes.
Is it three? Three, okay. So trying to take these in order in the way we heard them. So if you can bring up on page 8 or 10 the site plan, and so the curve, and so we've looked at this quite a bit in terms of the site plan, and so you can see the curve. The advantage this site has, I lived on Remington for years and years, right on the corner of Remington and Colt, and so across the street, and so I too would come up to Remington, or I'd take Winchester at the same location. So when you're on Winchester, the curve is going away from you. At this site, the curve is pulling in the opposite direction, so it's easier to see from this side. And so if you can see how it's bending, we're able to see on this side straight down, where on the other side of the road, it's the opposite. And so in terms of sight distance, the sight distance is better from our side of the street in this. And so, but we definitely need to run the GDOT study, meet with your engineer, and comply with everything. And we totally understand that. But we do have that kind of a little bit of a distinct advantage for it. In terms of the NR3 and the lot size, up the street, a lot of the questions we answered were the same thing about lot size and what it was and the quality of what we're bringing in. And so this is very much a development where your maintenance is taken care of, it's lock and go, and so the idea is to have smaller lots. The density is 4.85, and so it's not a high density development. It's very similar to the ones that are in the area. There's a mixture of towns and condos up the street in a lot of different configurations. And so Chamblee Dunwoody is a very blended area when you're looking at it. And this site sets up well, and so we're trying to bring a very, very, very high-end detached product that has that courtyard and has that feel. Now, in terms of the trees, we've definitely heard from the past, and we brought that development to the top of the hill on the back side, and we actually have a tree plan that shows all those specimens along the back are being saved that sit up at the top of it, and it's actually in our packet and part of what we're proving out with the grading plan. Along the front, we were not able to, we really tried to save the specimens on the front, but because of the 12-foot trail, and by the time we just couldn't do it, but we really, really tried to do that. And in terms of the parking, so we're showing 4 guest spaces there. We could definitely continue, because we have the garage coming out to the front of that lot, we could definitely continue some additional spaces there, and then also on the stub road on the side, there's definitely some places we can find additional guest parking. The same concern would go, as they're mentioning, for us, but we do have the 2-car garage, the 2 spaces in the parking space outside of the house, but we can also look at some additional guest parking for there.
Got about 30 seconds, so you'll have to wrap it up. And
I believe, and in terms of, there was some discussion about the character of the plan. We feel like this, especially with what was designed up the street and how the success of that, and seeing that open courtyard and seeing these homes be really high-end, very custom homes, that this is just in keeping with that mixture of different type of characters up and down Chamblee Dunwoody. And so with that, we would seek your guys' approval. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Next item is item number 4, 3239, PZ 2021-918-4783 Peachtree Road parking variance. Is that the one?
We received a email from this developer this week asking for a deferral on this project.
And is that something that we would need to have you consent, or is that automatic?
that would be for consideration to defer the project.
Okay with deferring the project?
If someone is here from the developer, from this development that would like to speak to that.
I think we're okay with deferring it at this time. Next item, we actually are skipping over, if you're following along on your piece of paper, I've been instructed that number 5 is also, we're skipping that for whatever reason. I wasn't given clear instruction on that.
It doesn't require a public hearing. It's a consideration later on the agenda. I apologize for that.
So the next, item number 6, 3234 TA 2021-07, UDO annual amendments.
Thank you. This year, when we reviewed items on the zoning code and development ordinance, things that needed to be improved, we saw a number of items that frequently requested variances, and so there was quite a packet of them. So we prepared a full project for this. The schedule you see up there is just to remind you and let folks know how much work has gone into this, that we met with council at a retreat and focused for a couple of hours on a series of potential changes to receive policy directive from you. We came back to you in September to review, did we get your directives correct? Did we understand properly? And then we went ahead and proceeded with preparing red lines. And so the process is to bring to you tonight for public hearing, and if you wish, first read, and then to come back to you in December for second read if these are appropriate to you. So as I mentioned, one of the reasons we pursued this was recognizing that we have a high volume of variance requests, and it's not just that we're getting variance requests. Many times applicants will try to bundle variances, and by that I mean instead of a discrete variance where they just couldn't quite meet our code, they tried, but there was one area, they were coming asking to have a whole sections and subsections and subsections, a blanket variance request coming before you. So that indicated we wanted to review the specific components. And then there were also just a few cleanup items and clarification items that we identified and shared with you for feedback. In total, in the big picture is there's about 16. This table shows you 16 of the items we looked at that frequently, they were frequent flyers, if you will. These were parts of the code that often came before you. This is over a period since 2019, so 2 or 3 year period. You had over 50 requesting streetscape variances, many really asking for parking variances, parking lot landscape. So where we saw many requests, and not just that they were the requests, but that this body found reasons to approve them. Often those were with conditions, I'd say probably always with conditions, but it did indicate that we could potentially look at the code and see if we could refine it somewhat. So that's a table of quite a set of proposed amendments, and I won't go line by line through the whole red lines that are proposed, but just to again summarize the intent, some of the pieces that we looked at. A big part of the resolution was to provide alternative compliance. That is, we went through a lot of the conditions that this body would put on those variances, things that you found acceptable, where you recognized it makes sense that certain properties couldn't meet the code, but we would like you to see how close you could come to it with alternatives. So we prepared menus of alternatives for them to consider. And then the big one was looking at the redevelopment sites, that these were the ones most constrained, that existing conditions created constraints, so it was more difficult to comply. So we defined better than what those what that meant for a redevelopment site, which properties would benefit from that, and then alternative compliance, ways they could meet our intent for very high quality, for ways to interface with the street and all of these things that make us a pedestrian pedestrian walkable community, and have alternatives. There were also a few changes in the use table, but these were clarifications, so things where mixed use was allowed in several of the mixed-use districts. Those were things, they were more cleanup type of things. There was no introduction of new uses, just to clarify on that piece of it. There are a couple of items related to the residential stream buffer exemptions. This gave some limited exemptions to existing decks or existing encroachments, that were very limited, but continued to meet the intent of the ordinance. There's also a change to allow some of the design standards, instead of requiring that they're variances, having them be waivers. This still means they come before you. This body determines them. The criteria is slightly different. They don't have such a high threshold. They don't have to show that there's something unique and unusual and particular to that property, like topography or odd shape. It's more minute and more discretion for you to consider those specific design provisions. The big one, as I mentioned already, concerned the redevelopment thresholds. There's no change in the threshold. It's easier to read, and in that section, we add redevelopment considerations and define that, and then the alternative compliance for a series of items related to impervious surface, for example, and other components. There's also some modifications to the tree ordinance. We added some incentives. We propose an update to the fee schedule. That was a separate document in your packet to increase the recompense, and then also to give extra credit for saving trees, specimen trees, that they also will count more. You'll get more credit if you save one of those than if you save a tree that's not a specimen tree. We add penalties for cutting boundary trees. Currently, there is not a penalty for that. And then, interesting, in our sustainability measures section, there's a list of sustainability measures you get credit for. We added trees to that. That wasn't in there prior. So those are some of the additional substantive areas in addition to the ones that were the primary changes related to redevelopment standards, so that a redevelopment site could better meet our intent. There were two others I want to mention and just sort of highlight. One concerned the DCI threshold. So in your red lines, there is the proposal retained in there to increase the threshold of size from 20,000 square feet, triggering a DCI. It's proposed to be increased to 50,000 square feet. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware that that was still, oh no, we're so close. It's interesting that it's utilities is the next one, and the power goes out. What does that say? Do you have it on your side? Our screen is still out, but is yours?
These two are blank. I guess these two are lit up.
Those side are, oh, I see, okay. Leslie gets to read, see if she likes it. You have to defer to Councilwoman Robson, excuse me.
Got HDMI signal.
Well, the other concerned utility, the burying of utility poles, and the discussion that we heard and understood made sense to you was you wanted to keep them. You didn't want to. You saw a reason to not require it citywide, to not require every aspect of every street on the city to bury the utility lines. You wanted it, as we understood it, within the certain area in our downtown, and we prepared a map because what we were told was between Peachtree Boulevard and New Peachtree Road. So every parcel that lines those streets on the Peachtree Boulevard side and on the North Peachtree Road side, and then everything in between. So it would be a specific map. There would be no guessing if you are subject to that requirement to bury the utilities. But all others would no longer be required. That's the way the red lines, that's the amendments before you. That's the way they read. So I just want to make sure if that was still satisfactory, that you understood what was being considered. That's our summary. I'm happy to go into more detail, but I know we talked about them quite a lot in other forums.
And that does come back up in later under the Planning and Development Department, or does it? It does. So, item number 8.
So we just need the public hearing
Yes,
open?
yes.
So, yes, sir.
So, anyone wishing to speak on this matter of the public hearing for the UDO annual amendments, please come up to the microphone, give your name, telephone number, and of course, it's Mr. Cussman.
You expect anything less? Darren Cussman, 3108 Skyland Drive, Chamblee 30341. I think there's some really, really awesome stuff in this change, or this proposed amendment. There's a lot that really does a lot for diversity in the city, particularly in housing and commercial districts, and that really, I don't want to say opens the door for more creativity, but certainly provides avenues for that. I think and kind of going through it, there are two things that struck me as a little bit of a concern, and you look at this, 99% of it I think is just going to do incredible things, but one of them is, particularly as it relates to housing and housing affordability. I know you guys have all spent a lot of time looking at that and addressing it. There's some things in there like fee in lieu on all residential products. You start doing that, and all of a sudden you're adding $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 to the cost of any single-family product, detached, attached, coming into the city. So if housing affordability is something that's important to you, the way you get there is certainly not by adding more administrative fees. It's already very burdensome, and compliance is already very burdensome. I think you guys have made great strides. What you're doing with stormwater management, for example, with some of the recent changes with Councilman Mock's modification a couple months ago. But all of those things have a substantial cost to them, and so the more you pile on, the harder and harder it is to create an affordable product. And so that's just kind of something that I'd ask you to bear in mind as you're going through this. One of the other things is, I think there's some great changes in the tree ordinance, but one of the problems with the current tree ordinance is that it lacks a lot of definitions. So, for example, if you have a hollow that's still standing, is that a tree? Is it not a tree? It's not defined in the ordinance. I didn't see anything in the proposed changes that defines what a tree is. So as you're looking through it, I just ask that you also consider definitions and making sure that we're actually kind of looking through and we're addressing that. Also on the tree ordinance currently, I think Chamblee looks at 2 caliper inches and above, which is different than any of the surrounding jurisdictions. They all start at 4. You start talking about a 2-inch caliper tree, you can be talking about a big pokeweed. So that kind of goes back to definitions, and it also kind of goes back to, do you really want to give density credit for someone saving a 2-inch tree that you can take out with a pair of pruning shears? So those are really my only 2 comments on that, but I think there's some really, really awesome changes in there that I'm hoping you guys will support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sure.
So what was all the information needed? Name, address?
Name and address.
Okay.
It's not really a project, so you just name and address should do just fine.
Sure. Jonathan Blaze, 2007 Gainsborough Drive. I did want to just mention the tree ordinance. So my wife and I moved here a couple years ago, and we moved from Atlanta City, where they had an extremely strict tree ordinance. Any tree that was going to be cut down, a major tree, they would post a sign, and there'd have to be a hearing, just like we're having today. I've never seen so many trees cut down as in our Gainsborough neighborhood, and most of them, I guarantee you, never came through the city. And so, I think that's wonderful that there could be increased measures in terms of accountability, but a lot of times, might be on a weekend or after hours, there's no enforcement, there's nobody to come and show up. The tree is usually gone by the time that, anybody comes around from the city. Also, it's just sort of a slap on the wrist where, for example, somebody might cut down a major tree and then they're just told by the city, well, just pay for the fee. To me, that's just a joke. So I would love it if there was some more accountability and enforcement in terms of the tree ordinance, something similar to in Atlanta City. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Mayor, before we move out of the public hearing section, we do need a date that we are deferring the item, the parking variance. We will need a date
What is
that we are
the
deferring
next
that.
public hearing, the date?
Next month's public hearing.
Next month's public hearing will be fine.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the public hearing. I'm going to call the regular scheduled meeting to order. Do we have any announcements and presentations?
I have an announcement. Can we please get winter out of this building?
I think it's cold.
It's freezing.
I have a scarf.
You can have my jacket.
I'll take your jacket. This is ridiculous.
For now. I might get cold. Then I'm going to borrow Burl's. This is a nice comfy one back there. All right, announcements and presentations. I believe that was the only announcement we have. All right, good, thank you. Staff action items, city clerk, approval of minutes. Any questions? All right, under city manager, engagement and total compensation study. Let's take it away, Mr. Walker.
Thank you. At the previous meeting we held, the budget work session that we held, this item came up for discussion. We have had already gone out and solicited some responses from outside firms. What we have here is a comprehensive approach to looking at not only the compensation and benefits, but also an employee engagement study to determine first whether the positions are accurately identified and described. Secondly, if the structure and the benefits are fair. And third, to determine if our employees are, continue to be engaged and enjoy the culture of the city, and to, make recommendations that improve any staff retention efforts. So 7 outside firms were contacted to provide quotes. All firms contacted provided similar services for other municipalities. We did get responses from 3 firms. We received responses from 4, but 3 provided proposals. And we are recommending Find Great People. They provided the most responsive bid, and staff is requesting the council authorize the mayor to sign an agreement with Find Great People to do this study. And they were not the cheapest, but they did provide the most responsive bid.
All right, any questions, council? All right, the Peachtree Boulevard North Gateway project is the next item.
So this project, the council provided a letter of support for this project. This is the intersection on Peachtree Boulevard, and that was an application for LCI funds from the state. At this point, it was not awarded LCI funds, so they're applying for a separate set of funds through the Transportation Improvement Program. And so, again, they're asking for a letter of support specific to that, those funds. No changes from the previous item.
That concludes your presentation.
That concludes my presentation.
Any questions from council? All right. On to C, planning and development. This is the portion where council gets to ask questions of the previously presented action items or public hearing items. First item is PZ 2021-878 and 1872 Hickory Road contextual setback variances. Does council have any questions? Any questions? This is not a public hearing, so there won't be any response. That might, go ahead.
There won't be any response.
Well, they don't get to stand up and talk to us.
Oh, okay. So,
Unless you ask a question of somebody.
well, where are we with that, considering the reasons that this was deferred so many times? I understand that staff has recommended approval of pretty much everything it looks like. And,
I had a good time to meet with the applicants, and we talked about a lot of great things. They taped out some stuff, and I see you back there. Thank you so much. It's good.
good, okay, all right. You good? I'm good.
Next item on the, and that will move to Tuesday for a vote on Tuesday. Move forward. And it's PZ 2021-913, 1957 Commodore Drive, Streetscape variance. Any questions from council on that?
So I only have one question for you, Darren.
Sorry, y'all went faster than I thought you were going to.
You really didn't want to pump the sewage up the hill? Like,
If this wasn't a recording meeting, I would say it's a blank job, but somebody's got to do it. But no, I really do wish we had infrastructure and utilities on Commodore Lane. I think there should be. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Pumping it up the hill obviously wouldn't be our first choice, but if we were going to do it, then I thought it was important to do it the right way rather than knock out, I think it was 7 or 8 different overstory trees, so we did bore it and get that tapping.
okay.
You're good. Cool.
Call me on the carpet.
If y'all let me go the other way, I will, but I don't think you want it dumping out on the street.
Any other questions from council members? And this item will also move forward to Monday, or Tuesday rather. PZ 2021-914, 3127 and 3137 Peachtree Road, variance and waiver. Did I say what? Chamblee, Dunwoody. I am so sorry. I don't have my glasses on, so I was not notified I'd be sitting in the big chair tonight. Chamblee, Dunwoody Road, rezoning DCI and variances for the Repose Chamblee project. Any questions?
I have a question about the driveways.
Go for it.
Oh, yeah.
You would probably call Mr. Wood up to the
Yes,
microphone.
please, Mr. Wood. I'm just not sure where they all are on this, and they're going to be like, how long are they? And this.
Which page
Wait a
are you
minute.
looking at?
You said Repose.
This is 3127 and 3137.
Okay, well, I have
The
a
other
question.
project on
Oh,
I
Chamblee.
have a
I'm
question on the
also
other one on
confused.
Chamblee Dunwoody Road too. So you'll come second.
Okay.
We have to go for the
Oh,
other.
this is the one
Yeah.
where we want to speak to
Is the
the
architect
architect who
here?
showed up. That's my bad. My
Okay.
bad. This-
Huh.
My bad.
Hi, my name is Samuel Kimani. I'm the architect for the project.
Okay. My question is, I didn't see any elevations for what this will look like on the street. I'm not sure what the side of the building facing the street is going to look like.
We haven't gone that far yet, but we're planning to, once, if we get approved, we'll have a presentation before any LDP is presented to the city.
Okay, I think we'll need to see that before we issue any variances. Will we need to see that beforehand?
Typically, go ahead.
No?
Let them show.
It isn't a requirement of the code for variances to provide that this far in advance of a project.
Okay. Not sure which cart or horse.
You may have, other applicants may have provided that in the past. It's just not an actual requirement in the code.
Yeah, like in this particular project, the staff is recommending we adjust some buildings. So typically would want, if that's is put in as a condition, would make that adjustment and then present the entire building as approved with conditions.
Right. And then there was some concerns about the interparcel connectivity, and there was some sites that I always like to put it, even if it's not physically put in, I like to have it put in as a condition that, and because we've had a lot of times when things happened and the conditions changed, like, why do you want to put in a parcel connection there? There's a gas pump there. Well, then the gas pump goes away, and it's a great place to put it. So, had it happen many, many times. So, I don't, even if it's your neighbor has a big wall there, still, is that something, but there's some other challenges with this site, right? Not just the fact that there might be a building there that would make it limit that, and plus his building design would limit some of these interparcel connections, correct? You can't connect through a building.
The one that we recommended approving
Show that what that is, because I kind of got lost on the north and the south and the east and the west descriptions, because I see it's north there now, but while it was going on, I couldn't.
So to the west, so to the right,
West.
Left, well, our left.
you're,
Go left and you'll hit Alabama.
sorry, right.
That's west.
So to the left of the drawing that you see, to the west, there are topographical constraints.
Right.
There are topographic constraints
On
that
that
made
side.
it on that side, that it did make it prohibitive or unreasonably prohibitive to do. Anything is possible, I guess, with engineering, but is it reasonable for your intents and purposes?
But you did recommend the approval of the, or not approval, but that we do keep the denial for the variance to put it on that side? Is that what you?
Correct. On the east
So it could
side,
go right in there?
we are recommending that they provide the, at least the easement for future connectivity on that side. They are already providing to the north on that corner side. It'll go through like where behind it is on the north is the bank parking lot, and then that will give you a way to get through to Shallowford. It'll be a nice connection all the way through if that. So they're already proposing that to meet that part of the code. They just were saying they couldn't meet the other sides of the property.
Thank you, because that was going to be my question. So you understand that by providing the easement doesn't mean that you have to build the connection?
Yes, and we on the northeast connection that is talking about, that we arranged the parking to allow for that. We didn't mention it. The reason we didn't mention it, right at the head of that parking, there's a building. There's an existing building on our neighbor's side. So it's something we couldn't mention because it's not currently viable option. We know that neighbor is trying to sell the property, so if you get to a point where that side has to be redeveloped, we will be able to connect to that.
Correct. That's what we look
The one
for.
to the east, still, there's no topographic.
We're talking about the one to the east, northeast.
I'm sorry?
The one to the east. The one to the west is the one that we can't do. The one next to
Right.
building 1, there's no connection there.
Okay. The one to the west is impossible.
Yes.
The one to the northwest is
East.
the one that you are proposing.
Yeah, the one to the north and the one to the northeast.
Because it's a detention pond.
Yes.
And then we are also asking for one to the east.
With the,
And
is that where the red dot is
is there
they're
an
showing?
objection to that?
No,
Okay.
we're saying currently it's not viable because there's an existing building. But we're showing our parking to where you can extend the parking and connect to that property on the east.
The only other thing is we would like to be sure that you provide the easement.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
That's different than, okay, we're not asking you to build it, we're just saying,
We have
if it
a
comes to fruition that that property gets sold and then that building comes down, that the easement exists, that interparcel connectivity can be built, period, that's it.
okay.
And that's part of the staff condition, is it not? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Thank you.
So, did I jump 2 projects? There's 2, I jumped
You jumped over 3. Now
I jumped over 3, so I got to back up and go to 3?
we did 3. That was 3.
That was 3?
We now move to 4.
Okay, so Ken's project is the repose project. I don't like these names. They need to be more like, what is that? It's the big buildings on the road. Anyway, PZ 2021-915, 4011 and 4079, Chamblee Dunwoody Road, rezoning DCI variances for the repose project. Now,
There we
Ken.
go. Da-da-da. Yeah. Show me the driveways. Show me the
Okay.
And in addition to the location and the length, they're going to be crusher as well? Is that what? Oh, okay, no. Okay.
If we get over to number 10 or number 8, either one of those. Okay, or that's well,
It doesn't show any driveways, though.
If you have the site, that's perfect, right there.
Ooh.
That one, yeah, there we go. Okay, so in terms of the driveways, you have the sidewalk, from the street. You have the 26-foot wide street, so that's the new fire code, and so they've widened the streets from what it used to be. 26 for the street, then you have the 5-foot sidewalk, and then you have the 18 to 20 behind it to the garage.
Okay.
And so that you're not blocking the sidewalk zone.
Okay.
And then in terms of the driveways, they would not be a crusher run. It's the trail that's down in the woods. We're doing the crusher run.
Okay,
Yes.
I
Yes.
stopped thinking it was like trail and driveways, crusher, and I was like, driveways?
It's the I think the way that was worded coming from DRB. There was a long discussion at DRB. Is the word driveways probably means like the connections from our development down to that trail to be the same material or something similar.
Karen, there's on the right-hand, that slide there, it has the illustration of the...
Right, yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure you saw that. My question is, the DRB condition, I totally blanked. I don't understand what the condition is. Can you use the little red dot to kind of show where they're talking about connecting that? Yeah.
So if you come up, so we have up by 13 and up by the top of the project, we have access shown on the site plan from both of those, but by 24 we did not. And so what we talked about at DRB was coming in, and the reason being is you can't just go straight down. So I was kind of like, all right, how do we do this? And so at DRB, we pulled out the topo maps and everything, and we realized we can kind of come along the lot and then go down. And so it would, instead of like a direct connection, it would kind of be like a little bit of a path coming around. Yes, and so there was a lot of discussion about that, and DRB really wanted to see that, and so that's what we were.
And those are going to be put in, and that makes me think that these are also this is not a gated community, correct? Out at that end, it's still got a nice little backtrack.
That's correct. It's like a quarter. It's a pretty long way, but yes, that would everything we're talking about would be put in by us.
Gotcha.
And did you ever require the map of the old rail line?
So I've heard it talked about. I have never personally seen it.
Do you have?
Talking about the goopy line or whatever it's called.
I saw the trail, where it would extend. There was a lot of discussion. We were talking about how to best extend it from here. There's like some different avenues where the trail would go from here through the neighborhoods.
I'm sorry I didn't get back with these guys because I do have a copy of that. What I'm talking about, the old rail line from...
Is it where the sewer is? Down where the sewer...
Off the top of my head.
Okay.
But I'll be happy to get that to you.
Okay.
Just because it's historic.
That'd be really cool.
Is there anything in the packet that actually shows those connections on here?
If you go to page 10.
Page 10.
In your packet. And you can, if you see on that,
I see the top one on 13.
And then you see the one at the very, very top connecting from Chamblee, Dunwoody, the Maltese Trail too.
I do.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then so what we were talking about is that other stub road is you can see if you go straight down, it's just too steep with steps. And so we were talking about coming down, and then where the topo kind of eases as you go a little further south. And so we're talking about going down and then down south and then turn east for that other trail.
So can we get something from you by Tuesday that illustrates?
Yes. We were showing it.
Illustrates whatever you intend to do. That way it can be entered into the record if...
We can add it to where they're showing on here and send that page back to staff.
Thank you.
I see that you have marked at one space, since we're on the topo map, the reinforced earth and slope wall tiered. Is that the only place on this where that's going to be, where that kind of vegetated wall is going to be, or is that going to be in several spaces along?
It's just on
there.
So once we pulled everything back to the top,
right.
Once we were able to grade it, it just occurs down on that bottom because there's like a steep drop all of a sudden behind those homes.
Okay, so just in that one spot.
That's correct.
Okay.
There's a wall. You see it it's in that on the north, and there's in like two little places, but one of them is much shorter.
Okay.
But they're right on that edge. Previously, there was a wall like around the whole thing, and so it's everything is up on top now.
Right. Okay, there are the tiered wall system, kind of right at the top, and then...
That's correct. And we're still gonna work on that, and where our hope is that we can continue to get that down. You know, we're really close to not the variance. 8 foot is the variance, and our tiered is pretty, not far from that.
Okay.
I thought there was a on the Gabion wall, which is on page 21, it shows the Gabion wall, and that is in some locations on the front. It's been called a couple things, vegetated wall, whatever, but it even says in the presentation a Gabion wall, which is the...
That's a monument.
Yeah, so...
Okay, I know. Yeah, we're just making sure that it was...
Yeah, we're trying to break it up. Yeah, the one that's a retaining wall that's a gabbing in nature would be on that south. We were looking at some different ideas for the frontage to make it kind of look really kind of cool, and you know, in terms of the way we can blend it with the stone, and so that's what that is. But that would be more of a sign.
Gotcha. All
And
right.
would that be running the entire length of Chamblee Dunwoody Road?
No.
Okay,
Just on that main entrance.
just at
You know,
the
the one
porch,
that's
okay.
shown there is probably about 15 feet long.
Okay.
Enough so that it looks natural, but with
Right.
a sign on it.
Okay. And I know that there's 10-foot supplemental zone from the street. There's 10 feet, then a 12-foot trail, and then it looks like there's more space between the end of that. It's 22 feet. And then how far in will a house sit?
Oh, I mean, the closest house is probably 40, 50. They're pushed back pretty far from there. You know, from the trail system, you can see the width of the house. It's probably 40 feet to that closest on the top, and then as you go to those in the middle, they get further than that.
Yeah. Great.
And we're trying to keep them back so that that courtyard is very visible.
Right.
Anyone else have any other questions? Brian, we haven't heard from you yet. Good. Leslie? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Trying to find my place again. Looks like it's number 5. PZ 2021-918, 4783 Peachtree Road parking variance. We're deferring that. They didn't mark it on I didn't mark it. I didn't do a good job.
Because you don't have glasses.
I don't have glasses. The next, so number 6 is the DCI extension for PZ 2019508. That's 5466 New Peachtree Road. Any questions? Which?
They weren't here.
They weren't here? Is that the one we're also deferring?
5 and 6 are...
Oh, no, what, this is actually, this is just it's more of it's not a public hearing, it's more of an administrative function of council. Our rules require that a DCI actually expire if permits aren't pulled within a certain period of time. And this is a case where this project...
Roses, the Manapro building.
Gotcha.
Right, the Mana Pro building.
You should say that.
Right, so this was a project that was approved in 2019, and they are coming back before you to request an extension because it would have expired. Because no land disturbance or building permits have been pulled, applicant did indicate that COVID-19, the pandemic, created delays on the redevelopment of the site, but that they are planning to submit plans, they are working on plans, and therefore they request this extension. This is only the authority of City Council, however, to grant an extension. The request is for I believe they're requesting staff is recommending an approval of a 1-year extension of the DCI in addition to all of the associated concurrent waivers and variances that were part of that approval.
And I don't think we've done one of those before since I've been on council, or DCI extension. Is that something you need us to handle tonight, or that we move that to Tuesday also?
You can move that to Tuesday.
Okay. Do you have any questions? Well, you might, I'd ask a question. Come on up to the microphone, I guess, and then, do you have a question, Mr. Mock?
I do not have a question.
You're going to say, what were you going to say? That's a question.
Yeah, what were you doing?
They just look eager to address us.
Thank you. I'm happy to see you all. Julie Seller, 1776 Peachtree. Just briefly, as Mr. Mesa said, this isn't something that comes up frequently. One thing we had asked, just especially in light of COVID, for your consideration, I think the code is a bit confusing. You might want to consider changing this or updating this with some of the next the next UDO updates. I think you can read it a few different ways. We would love to have a 2-year extension. I think it's going to come down to interpretation of, is this a 1 year, and then if we're not far enough along, if we have to come back again for 1 year. So just for your consideration, if you are inclined to go ahead and give the 2-year, just given the last 18 months that the world has been living through. So thank you all. We appreciate it and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
No other questions, sir.
Well, thank you. That one is, so we're down to item number 7, the plan first award, the DCA memorandum of agreement. Is there any questions on that? The presentation, please.
Sure. So the call that the City of Chamblee was awarded the Plan First recognition from DCA. This is showing recognition that we're a community that actually implements their plans, not just creates a plan and lets it sit on the shelf. So with that indication that we're implementing them, we get this recognition. Part of that requirement, it comes a requirement to enter into a memo of agreement. And that includes that we will continue to report on our progress. We will engage in the DCA activities, which include training and other events. So this is an item for you to authorize the mayor to sign if you so choose.
Is there any need for expediency? Should we do it tonight or Tuesday?
No.
Okay.
It's not an urgent matter.
I will say that this is the second time we've won this award in the last,
Let the record show that there was polite applause.
Did you have anything to do with it, Mr. Walker?
absolutely not.
I was wondering if you were going to throw your shoulder
We
up.
have a wonderful staff that has done a great job, and we appreciate the council's support for all of the projects that have come from all of the planning efforts.
All right, item number 8, TA 2021, the -0707, the UDO annual amendments. I'm sure we have lots of questions, council members.
No, we had such a good time to, we had such a good time discussing them before.
So, can you go through the slides that you showed? Because that prompted me to ask a few questions. There was definitely the one on the DCI going from 20 to 50. I thought we lowered it one time from 50 down to 20 during my time on council, and now it's going back the other way. I have some reservation about that. I remember. That one.
You do remember correctly. It did go from 50. I believe it was 50. Was it 50? Andrew, would you like to approach the?
Yes, Andrew. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Could you come to the microphone?
Thank you. I'm a little hoarse. What council did in the end of 2017 was to take the PUD process. At the time, the PUD was like an overlay. So to take the PUD process, the PUD was triggered by 20,000 square feet or more of more than one building. Take that in the DCI that was triggered by 50,000 square feet of a single building and just combine them into the DCI process. So the DCI was lowered from 50 to 20, but a PUD at the time had some very similar review criteria to the DCI, just to get the full picture.
So what we had was, we noticed that, I think the part of the redevelopment of Chamblee Plaza was because we lowered it from 50 to 20 because they got captured quicker into the to being able to thresholds to, have to put in the streetscape and the stormwater and all that. And so, based on the type of businesses that I was seeing, and so I have a huge concern about changing this back. It seems like it's working better for us now than it did. So I just...
Well, we don't have a PUD designation anymore, do we?
No.
I think this does kind of go hand in hand with some of the other regulations in the UDO that are changing, so that some of those items are being required now, or you have the alternative remedies. But that is something we can kind of, take your comments over the next few days, and we can pull that out if that section needs to be discussed further.
Well, before we took real-world examples of this is what happened, and we had, and this we're kind of going back at it and it's like just throwing numbers and like without knowing what the 20,000 square foot business is or building examples and how that would have impacted. I'm just kind of nervous about that. It seems to be working really well for us right now.
Okay.
But again,
we can.
I don't. Maybe I don't understand fully how the other changes are going to provide us that review.
Sure. We can absolutely bring those real world examples back, and then.
Well, just to you use the example of Chamblee Plaza,
yes.
that those are it wasn't because of a DCI or a threshold of size. It was the redevelopment that triggered the requirements that they had to do that. So it wasn't a DCI-related prompting. So similarly, the redevelopment requirements will have to be met. They're in the code already. But if you're feeling you want to still see them, regardless of what size, but I'm just assuring you that the code would still apply to those 20,000 or 30,000 square feet. It just doesn't have that additional scrutiny from DRB and from you all. But the code is capturing with what we reviewed with you on the design standards, just that those standards need to be still applied.
Are we seeing, like, part of this is we're just seeing a lot of projects that are redundant, because it's the same variances. Are we seeing a mass of 20,000 square foot projects that we just don't need to be reviewing, and I don't really get the change. So I guess maybe it just might be another time and place to. We have 2 months because this is.
Andrew Russell will address that.
I don't believe since January of 2017 that we have received any DCI application that didn't also have a variance or waiver attached to it. I can confirm that, but I'm nearly certain.
Gotcha.
Okay. It'd be coming before us for other reasons anyway. Yeah.
All right, anything else on the UDO annual amendments? And I think Mr. Cussman gave us some suggestions. We can definitely take that into consideration. It's something we look at. Again, coming out blind, I don't really have a chance to review his comments, but he usually has something he wants to share. So that includes under C, planning and development. We're moving on to D, police department.
Excuse me, Mayor, I didn't mean to interrupt. I want to ask a question about the deferral project, if I could.
Sure can. Come on up to the microphone.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt earlier. Didn't want to interrupt. I'm Mark Buchanan with Greenleaf Investment Partners. My question was about the deferral project, if it could be extended longer than 30 days due to parallel work going on with the project. Our request was of 90 days, so to review again.
Well, that's the first I'm hearing about the 90-day. That would have been important to know.
It was there was an email about it.
Okay, well, maybe I missed it in the email. There's a lot of stuff we get, so it's okay. I have no problem with that.
Yeah,
the rest of the council's,
but I don't know if we have to, this is grapes and grains.
Mayor, we've already exited the public hearing portion, and we did extend it, state that it was a 30-day deferral. That is something we can look into over the next 30 days, though, if they request a further deferral.
Okay, extending it, we can look into that.
Yeah, and it really comes down to also advertising.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we can discuss that further.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. If we have to make another deferral in 30 days for 60 days, then that's how we do it, then we'll figure it out.
Understand?
We're willing to work with you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're not, it just got caught in the procedural tangle web that I messed up. My fault.
Understand. Thank you. And if I can add, John, Michelle, and Andrew, thank you for all of the work leading up to this point. So I heard you mention an award earlier for your team. I'm sure it was very well merited. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll go on to D, Police Department, new positions.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Police Department is requesting the approval of 4 new positions. The Crime and Intelligence Analyst. Actually, it's 3 positions. It's listed up there as 4 because it's Quartermaster and Fleet Master is actually 1 position. So we've got a Crime and Intelligence Analyst to collect, analyze, and disseminate information regarding criminal activity, to identify repeat offenders and increase the effectiveness of patrol deployment and crime prevention. The second position is a training officer to coordinate all law enforcement training, both internal and external, and we believe that by ensuring all personnel are trained to a high standard, we can reduce liability to the department and maximize the quality of the services we provide. And third and finally, we are requesting approval of a quartermaster/fleet manager to issue equipment, to ensure accountability and serviceability of that equipment, to maintain and equip patrol vehicles, and ensure that repairs and maintenance are done properly. And at this time, I'm happy to take any questions regarding these positions.
Any questions from council?
Who's taking care of this stuff now? I mean, like, is it like 3 people doing many different jobs? Or?
There, in terms, exactly. There are people wearing multiple hats.
These are the same positions that were in our unfunded budget talk.
Yes. Yes, we discussed this at the budget meeting.
So you really do just need 3 people, or will you split the quartermaster and fleet manager job if needed?
No, that was supposed to be 1 position.
1 position, okay. So 3, okay.
We discussed the dollar figure in the budget?
These were the positions that were added, but we did not add any funding for these separate because of open positions.
If I go back and pull my notes from the budget, there's a dollar figure in there.
For each of these, there is a dollar figure in terms of their salary ranges, yes.
Anything else? Moving on to E, Parks and Recreation. Nothing from Parks and Rec, we're all good. Got Burl here, he has nothing from Parks and Rec? Next week. All right. F for Finance. G for Public Works. H, Economic Development. And nothing. And I for Community Engagement. Ms. Brittany, nothing? All right. Boards, authorities, and committees. Nope, nothing from them. First and second reads will be, if we not applicable, but they would be done on Tuesday.
We do have the UDO as a first read.
So UDO has amendments are moving to the first read. All right. No items under Mayor and Council action items. So that brings us to 7 citizen comments. 3 minutes. It's your time to come up to the microphone. 3 minutes. It's a monologue, not a dialogue. State your name. Give it to the city clerk.
I'm Melody Euchman. I live in Huntley Hills. And
what's your street address on that?
Oh, I'm sorry. 1990 Commodore Lane.
Thank you.
I also want to thank the police department because the community officers, Officer Polthres and Garcia, came to my house and helped me be more safe. And I listened to all their suggestions. But I was on Nextdoor just a few days ago. I invited my neighbors to come to this meeting. I had been feeling this. I moved in about 10 months ago, so I'm a new owner in that community. I've felt that it's very dark, very dark compared to every other place I've lived. I've been in like 4 other counties in Atlanta. When I take my dog out, even in the summertime at 10 o'clock at night, I run in, run out really quickly. So by the police, I did install a little light on my driveway area, but it was suggested maybe Georgia Power could add some street lights. It's very dark there. A lot of people were against it, something about the environment. I don't know. Maybe motion sensor lights, LED lights don't cost that much, you know. Anyway, I was just wondering, since I came here to make that request, if maybe it could be considered at some point. I know tonight's not like the thing. But anyway, it's a great community, but it is a little dark.
I'm sure most of the council members will be here after the meeting. You can reach out and talk to them after the meeting. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Going once, twice? Okay. Yep. Again, it's 3 minutes. You get monologue, not a dialogue. So tell us what you got to say. You can say anything you want.
Jonathan Blaze, 2007 Gainsborough Drive. This is about the stretch, actually, near Chamblee first. There is no sidewalk along that stretch, and I would love to see in the future some type of a trail or sidewalk, because I do see people walking and running along Chamblee-Dunwoody. Extends up to my neighborhood, Gainsborough, and the sidewalks are very inconsistent in terms of the different neighborhoods. And it's a huge. I've reached out to numerous people and have been told it was not in the funding package for transportation more recently, but it's a huge safety concern because everybody is in agreement that Chamblee-Dunwoody is an extremely dangerous road, and I see people having to walk and run actually in the road because there's no sidewalk or on the shoulder. And I don't know in terms of anybody's ever been hurt, but I would hate it if that did happen. So I just wanted to put that out there. I know it would be a more long-term project, and it's much wider. I've reached out to the Public Works Department, and it's much bigger than something that I feel that they can just do on their own, because we're talking about multiple neighborhoods. I know Brookhaven is on one side and then Chamblee's on the other, but it's a public safety concern, and and also a quality of life issue in terms of people being able to walk and run along there safely. My child is 15 months old. By the time he gets to Chamblee Middle and Chamblee High, I would love it if he could have the possibility of walking or running along there instead of having to drive him or take the bus. So I just wanted to put that out there. I see this as a much more long-term project in my mind, but hopefully we can get it done in a matter of time. So thank you.
And as I said before, I'm sure the members of council will be around after the meeting and you can engage them on that. There's probably I'll share some thoughts with you on that. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. Do we have executive session? Out of here. I wasn't practicing. I didn't know. I literally had